Este video ha sido subtitulado con permiso de Filo71. Para apoyar este video, suscríbete al usuario André Mijail. Comparte este video con tus amigos, deja tu comentario edificante y agrega favoritos. Dios te bendice.
If you were watching this, you probably consider yourself an intelligent atheist who either is going to college or has graduated from one. You probably desire to know truth and to become an independent thinker, free of religion. More than likely, you study a lot more than the average religious person. And the reason might be, among others, that atheists are just a minority, not well understood in your circle of friends or in your family or anywhere else or even here on YouTube. However, even as an intelligent person, you must confess that there are problems in the atheistic belief system. Here are 5 questions that you must answer well, and it must make sense in an intuitive way, not colliding with reality as we see it. These are the top 5 reasons why I just could never become an atheist. You say Christians use God to fill in what they don't know. Richard Dawkins coined the phrase God of the gaps as a stopgap for ignorance. But aren't you using chance in the exact same way in which you accuse Christians of using God, hence God of the gaps? Think about this for just a minute. It's not a stupid question. Scientists say given time and chance, life can always erupt and begin ex nihilo. But chance can play exactly this role also. What I'm saying is, instead of God of the gaps, chance of the gaps. So science has to be able to eliminate chance when probability of events get too small. If not, chance can be invoked to explain anything. So, would you agree that it is illegitimate to take an event, decide for whatever reason that it must be due to chance, and then propose a whole bunch of probabilistic resources because otherwise chance would be implausible? Darwinism makes chance in the form of random variation a creative force in biology. That's just not very intelligent in my opinion. And this leads me to question number 2. Why should there be something instead of nothing? This is the existential side I know every atheist has. You must ask yourself this all the time. But you have to be able to answer me how you, as just a rational animal with no higher purpose in life, is here rather than not. This kind of reminds me of when Descartes went into Starbucks and the guy who was behind the counter asked him, do you want me to leave some room for cream? And he said, I think not. And then he just disappeared. Okay, bad joke. Carl Sagan said, the cosmos is all there is, all there was, and all there ever will be. Atheists say that all this has just existed for no reason. But every intelligent person knows that this world came into existence at some point in time. So follow me for a second. If Edwin Hubble was right, and the universe is indeed expanding, then it follows that it had a beginning. Why should it have? Also, the world seems to have been fixed somehow to make life possible. Then there's the fact that the biological life itself bears the marks of intelligent design. Whether intelligent design is a fact or not, that's not my point. I'm not saying it is right here. My point is that it bears some kind of a mark of an intelligent design. And lastly, the world has something called moral order. Why should it rather than not? Which leads me to my 3rd question. Where do you get your morals from? Atheists say that in order to survive, animals develop. Through the process of natural selection, naturalistic forces mold certain behavior that we call moral behavior, which simply functions to allow the organism to exist and continue to survive. Actually, not the organism, but the species, because in some cases it requires sacrificing individual organisms so that the larger species can survive. This is all that morality ends up being. You have to admit, this is a huge problem for the atheistic worldview. That's all that morality ends up being. And this is because the category of things that we call moral is not adequately engaged just by descriptions of past behavior. Morality entails a look forward to the future, not just to the past, not just looking backwards to what we have done, or what was done by certain individuals, which they happen to call moral. But a look forward into the future about how we ought to behave. Since morality is prescriptive, not descriptive, and if it is normative, if it talks about how we ought to behave, and the evolutionary description of moral behavior doesn't engage that very fundamental core element of morality, then it hasn't explained it, and morality still needs to be explained. What do you think? So maybe you're saying that it's all part of evolution, which would then lead me to my fourth question. How did morals evolve? You have to admit it's a very fair question. The problem, though, is in what you're suggesting. That there is something in us that is self-consciously aware of the process of evolution, that understands what the goal of evolution is, survival of our own species, and instructs us through our conscience to fulfill the optimal conditions for that survival. But isn't this a remarkable statement, to say the least? Nobody even knew what genes were until Gregor Mendel in the latter part of the 19th century. Look, consider two cavemen in neighboring villages. One kills the other in cold blood. We're being asked to believe that he feels guilt because he realizes such an act ultimately undermines his own survival status. How? In the rest of the animal kingdom, killing the opposition seems to secure just the opposite. It just makes no sense whatsoever. Question number 5. Can nature generate complex organisms in the sense of generating when previously there was none? Where else does this take place in our universe? Intelligence leaves behind a characteristic, trademark, or signature. Something specific and complex by nature. It has to be contingent and not necessary. It has to be complex and not readily repeatable by chance. So what I'm saying is, if I shoot an arrow at a wall and then paint the bullseye around it, I'm imposing a pattern after the fact. On the other hand, if the bullseye is there first, and then I shoot the arrow into it, I know it was by design. Well, look at an Albrecht Dürer woodcut. It came to be by mechanically impressing an inked woodblock on paper. The Dürer woodcut exhibits a specific complexity by nature, but the mechanical application of ink to paper via a woodblock does not account for the woodcut's complexity. It must be referred back to the complexity of the woodblock, which in turn must be referred back to the designing activity of Albrecht Dürer himself. All around us, that makes sense, except for the atheist in nature. Nature is blind, everything else designed intelligently. Why? So what you're saying is time and chance plus something coming out of nothing, morality evolving, and then suddenly we're here, observers, apart from everything else in nature. Is that what you want me to believe?